free as well, is he? Easy this bit.
Welcome back to the LOSAIL International Circuit then, ready for the 2021 Moto2 World Championship Class Group Photo. As ever, every year, I feel like we say the same thing. It's the most competitive Moto2 World Championship to date, and yet it just feels like it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Some really interesting names in the intermediate class this year. The top 5 from Moto3, including this man, Tony Arbolino, have all moved up. Many of them looking pretty handy. On paper, Matt, it looks like there are 3 riders who probably just leap out at you. The likes of Sam Lowes, of course, who had a fantastic season last year, finishing 3rd overall, Marco Bezzecchi and Remy Gardner. But in reality, the strength and depth in field in Moto2 this year, you look and there's going to be some handy riders that won't even score points here in a few days' time.
This is a field deep in exceptional talent. There's one of them. We welcome back to the World Championship, I guess you could say. Of course, he has World Championship experience way back in 2009 when he was a 125cc rider, teammate to none other than Marc Marquez. Cameron Beaubier, 5 times Moto America Superbike champion, a double-pronged American assault on the Moto2 World Championship this year, of course, coming into this intermediate World Championship battle with Joe Roberts, who really established himself as a top 6 contender throughout last year. But as Steve just mentioned, this is a high caliber, high quality Moto2 entry in 2021.
Yeah, really respect Cameron Beaubier for giving this one a shot, you know, given how successful he's been over in the United States. You could argue and make a claim for saying, you know what, you could probably stay there, earn a great deal of money, continue winning, but he wanted the challenge. He's come over here to try and test himself against the world's best in Moto2, and it's great to see another rider from America featuring in the World Championship again.
And this is a completely different Cameron Beaubier. He's 28 years of age now, joining the Tenor American racing team, actually replacing the outgoing American Joe Roberts. Back then he was a fresh-faced teenager, I think by his own admission, not quite ready for the stresses and the strains of being a World Championship rider. It was in a high-profile team, Rebel KTM, alongside, as we said, none other than Marc Marquez, a team actually managed by Francesco Guidotti, of course, who's now boss of the Pramac Ducati team in MotoGP. But yeah, great to see him back, having another crack at it.
The Elf Mark VDS team, much more burgundy on the bikes here this year. Number 22, Sam Lowes. A great end to last year, a great year all round. Of course, remember, he missed the opening round in Qatar due to injury. Teammates again this year with Augusto Fernandez, but fair to say, Matt, and we're not over-egging this one, Sam Lowes was by far the fastest rider here a couple of days ago in the test. Not just in terms of one-lap speed, but his pace overall was frightening.
It really was. Sam Lowes on the last night of the test decided to do a full race simulation, and his best time of 1:58.655 was not in a soft tyre time attack mode. It came during that very fast and consistent race simulation. Sam Lowes picking up in 2021 pretty much where he finished off quite heroically in Portimao. Let's not forget he was fighting for the world title against Enea Bastianini and Luca Marini, and somehow wrestled that Triumph Cadillac motorcycle around Portimao, very physically demanding, undulating circuit, with a wrist fracture which really should not have permitted him to be on the grid. How on earth Sam Lowes was able to finish that race, let alone on the podium? Courage above and beyond the call of duty, and quite rightly, many people think he's going to be the pre-season favourite, a reborn rider in many respects last year. Some people felt he was perhaps fortunate to get the Mark VDS Racing Team ride, but when that opportunity came, boy, did he grab it with both hands.
Where do you start? There's so many names there that you just saw. Joe Roberts himself, of course, much talk about him potentially going into MotoGP with Aprilia at the end of last year. He decided to stick in Moto2 with the Italtrans team. It's a big year for the American, and a big year for so many other riders as well, including this man on screen, Jorge Navarro, Matt, who found himself in the gravel trap all too often in 2020.
One of the real perplexing questions of 2020 for me, Jorge Navarro. Clearly on his day, a very, very accomplished World Championship motorcycle race. You don't win and podium at this level without having something about you. But last year was just a horror show. 15 Grand Prix. He DNF'd in more than half. 8 DNFs for Jorge Navarro last year. Racing still for Speed Up Racing, although a slight tweak. They're now known as the Boscascura chassis, of course, after their owner and boss, Luca Boscascura. So we'll be getting our heads around that one in the first couple of races.
Here we see the Liquimoli then intact team. Marcel Schrotter staying put with the team. He needs to go a few steps better than he did in 2020, and he's being joined, of course, by the runner-up in Moto3 last year, Tiger Tony Arbolino from Italy, who was one of 2 rookies who particularly impressed us a few days ago when we went track spotting, Matt.
So many exciting rookies coming up there. One of them on the left-hand side of your picture, Celestino Vietti, promoted into the Sky VR 46 project alongside Marco Bezzecchi, who had a breakthrough year in Moto2 last year. You've got the reigning Moto3 world champion, Alberto Arenas, and this young man who we're looking at now, and this team in particular, Red Bull KTM Ayo, boy, have they got a stellar lineup this year. Ralph Hernandez was incredibly fast over the course of the pre-season test, and Remy Gardner, breakthrough victory for him at the last round in Portimao last year, elevated in status to the Red Bull KTM Ayo squad, and he looks like he is going to pose a major, major threat in the World Championship. The Aussie flag flying on the top of a Moto2 podium, or an intermediate World Championship podium, for the first time since Ant West back in 2014, of course.
So there you see at the front, Sam Lowe's and Augusto Fernandez. Fernandez will want to try and pick things up here this year. Arm pump surgery successful. Now it's time for him to try and charge. There is Remy Gardner, who Matt just mentioned, won the most recent race. This is such a big, big year for the Australian. I think many believe, Matt, that he's MotoGP bound, but it's not just as easy as let's just put Remy Gardner in MotoGP. He's got to earn it. He's now got the right bike, the right team around him to be able to do that.
Let's be honest, Steve, all the ingredients are there for him to really step up this year. He stepped up hugely last year. We were both really big admirers of the work he went about last season, of course, on a year-old Kalex chassis as well, let's not forget. So with the late spec Kalex machinery underneath him, the support of Red Bull, Aki, who knows how to win races and world championships, certainly in the lower classes, you just feel it's all in place this year for Gardner to take that final step.
Here is Tom Luthi. Now, Tom struggled in the test series, struggled in general last year. He enters his 14th season in the intermediate class for the Pertamina Mandalika SAG team. It looks like at the moment it's going to be a struggle for the Swiss rider to try and get himself anywhere near the top 3. In contrast to that, his very tall teammate just to the left of him there, the Dutchman Bo Bensnijder, who we thought was World Supersport bound at the end of last year. This is his chance, Matt, and it looks like he's taking it with both hands.
Yeah, a rider that will not be disappointed to know that we've got 2 races here in Qatar, because he loves this LOSAIL International Circuit. Qualified 5th last year, just missed the top 10. Great to see Jake Dixon back, of course. His season ended last year. That horrible practice crash in Valencia, one which ended his season prematurely, fresh off the back of that heartbreaking crash while leading late on in Le Mans. It's been a tough, tough rehabilitation for Jake Dixon, the British rider. That wrist injury, that wrist fracture was so serious at one stage, he was worried it might actually end his racing career. And there are a lot of people, though. Jake Dixon, limited laps he could complete in succession at the test, but he was straight back inside the top 6 and looking very, very strong. And there are a lot of people that think, you know, with no British rider in MotoGP currently, a really strong year for Jake Dixon in 2021. That may well open some big, big doors for him next year.
Yeah, when you think about, with Cal Crutchlow, of course, having left, there's no Brit as a permanent rider in the MotoGP class at the moment. There's a big opportunity there for Jake if he can have himself a good season. There is Navarro, then we already mentioned him, of course, on the newly named Boscascuro.
Yeah.
But we should just point out that the team is still Speed Up Boscascuro. That one's a little bit confusing. The chassis has been renamed Boscascuro. Of course, the Aspar riders also will be riding them for this year. There is Marco Bezzecchi alongside Celestino Vietti. Bezzecchi himself, Matt, a fantastic year, plenty of opportunities to wrestle for the World Championship, but just when it looked like things were lining up for him, a couple of mistakes appeared.
Yeah, just at the wrong time, weren't there? There was big points went begging in both Aragon races. You remember he crashed out late on in the first one. That really put a big dent in his championship challenge. Another rider, of course, that said no to Aprilia in MotoGP for 2021. Aprilia came fishing in Moto2 at the end of last year, but nobody took the bite. Fabio Di Giannantonio, Joe Roberts, Marco Bezzecchi, among some of the names, Aaron Canet as well, we believe, all spoke briefly to Aprilia, but decided to focus on Moto2. And all those names that we just mentioned, you are going to expect them to be leading protagonists in this championship in 2021.
So many riders confident that they can be on the podium here in a couple of nights' time. Riders that are coming into this new, like Barry Baltas on the left, Hafiz Sirin riding for NTS. There's rider switchers. There's Stefano Manzi here, goes into the Flexbox HP team alongside the very strong Hector Gartho, who had an outstanding end to last year. Of course, that meant Lorenzo Baldassari has gone over to MV Agusta. What's happened to the career of Lorenzo Baldassari? He'll certainly be hoping that he can sprinkle some Qatar magic, as he has done the last couple of years when we line up on the grid on Sunday night. He's
got a great record here, hasn't he, Baldassari? Podiums in his last 3 visits, including second here 1 year ago. Arguably, that's the most experienced lineup in the field, really. Baldassari and fellow Italian Simone Corsi, although it was quite a bruising end to pre-season testing. We were stood at turn 2, weren't we, mate, on the last night of the winter testing campaign, and poor old Simone Corsi had quite a nasty high side coming out of the second corner. Thankfully, he was perfectly okay, but not the best way to go into 2021.
A few other riders we've not mentioned, of course, the Indy Aspar Boscoscuro riders, Aaron Canet, who's fully fit and raring to go, loves Qatar, looked very good in the test here a couple of days ago. He's joined by the Moto3 world champion Alberto Arenas.
He did, and I think you mentioned those 3 names, Steve: Lowe's, Bezzecchi and Gardner. They're most people's preferred picks. They look like the rock-solid bets where the smart money's going. But for me, next outside of those top trio is Canet. He's got that more experience, he's fully fit, he looked fantastic on the bike the other night when we went out to watch as well. Really smooth. A little bit of concerns about the fact that he didn't seem to have good pace on a soft tyre, on a brand new tyre, which obviously is going to perhaps impact him in terms of qualifying, but I'm expecting big things from Canet this year.
A couple of riders that we haven't mentioned also that have just walked off the grid. Italians, of course, riding for Fausto Grassini's team. Nicolo Bulega, who it seems still hasn't been able to put all of the pieces together in Moto2 as yet. And that man there, number 21, Fabio Di Giannantonio. It was very much a season of wasted opportunities for Fabio Di Giannantonio. No, Matt, he was playing his cards in the winter. He's playing his chances up quite big during the winter. Didn't necessarily show any signs that he had that speed all sort of coming back to him here a couple of days ago in the test. But another rider who's got to try and step it up this year.
When you think the opportunities, like you say, Steve, the what-ifs for Fabio Di Giannantonio towards the back end of last year, twice in the last 5 races he crashed out of the lead, and then he dumped it really early on. First corner he crashed out, didn't he? In Portimao, wiped out poor old Nicolo Bulega in the process as well. So big year for so many of these riders, the likes of Di Giannantonio, who seems certain that he's MotoGP bound next year. He has a 2-year contract with the Grassini project now. Of course, before Fausto Grassini's tragic death from the coronavirus complications, he'd actually confirmed pre-Christmas, Fausto Grassini, that he was going to become an independent team owner